All right, everyone, welcome back to Daily Power Boost. Today on Beyond the Boost, I'm sitting down with Tabatha DeBruyn. Tabatha is a transformational breath master, one of only a handful of certified 9D somatic breathwork practitioners in the world, and someone who has spent nearly 2 decades helping high achievers find their way out of burnout and into a life that actually fits who they're becoming. Tabatha, welcome to Beyond the Boost.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited about this conversation.
You told me on the vibe call that after your mom passed, you were fine when you were serving others, but when you were alone, it was a different story. Tell us more about that gap. What were you performing and for whom?
So I was a transformational coach for private clients, startup entrepreneurs especially, and I was running my own online health and wellness business. I was a wife currently of 30 years. My boys are now 26 and 22. And at the time that my mom passed, I was juggling it all. I had 10 years as a caregiver with her. I really felt like there was nothing left unsaid, so I was surprised at my body's response to the grief. I knew I would grieve, but what I didn't know is I was going to struggle with panic attacks when I was by myself. If I was in doing mode and pushing mode, as opposed to like feeling mode, then I was struggling with insomnia. My hands were going numb. I was having heart palpitation, and I knew that I wanted to find another modality, even though I had a treasure trove of modalities that I used with other people.
And you also said that it took getting involved in the breath work to realize that you were repressing some of it. That's a specific kind of not knowing. What did it feel like to not know you were carrying this?
You don't know what you don't know. And it wasn't until I literally allowed my body to surrender to a state where I was able to stop the ruminating thoughts, feel safe in my body, and allow for the subconscious mind to unearth what had been repressed there, which, to be really honest with you, was a lot of guilt and shame and disappointment and grief and anger. And honestly, in my conscious mind, I just thought I was sad. I just thought I missed her. But allowing for those feelings to come up without the shame for feeling them, and then allowing them to move through my body on the other side of a somatic breathwork journey, my body felt safe. I actually felt like I had the ability to feel joy again, rather than stay in the grips of grief. And I felt like I had a conversation with mom that made everything so much more clear. I feel like everything happened for me rather than to me. I was able to let go of the victim mode that I was unaware of and realize that I had to feel the depths of despair that one could feel, and know that this modality absolutely can help people feel better in the body and the mind.
As you told me, when you came out of that first 90-minute session, and you said it just now, my body felt safe. I want to sit with that for a moment. Safe from what, would you say?
I would say I'm calling it safe when I felt at peace and knew the difference of chronic fight, flight, freeze. Because if that's your baseline, all of a sudden feeling balanced, feeling calm, grounded, regulated, that's what felt safe to me for the first time in a very long time. Much of my adult life for sure, probably some of my childhood
that's
as well.
very common when you're up in that mode and you've done it so long, you don't even realize you're in it until you're on the other side of it. And that, for some people, can be a little bit disorienting at first because it's new, right? The body's not sure what to do with it. that new identity, you're not sure consciously, subconsciously, somatically.
That's why working with a trusted facilitator through a somatic journey like this, we can bring it to your attention to help you understand that this was the familiar, but this isn't serving you. So this is going to feel different, and that takes time to step into that new identity. So that takes integration, and it takes patience and trusting that it can be different. But I was looking for different.
That person who can support you through the shift, right? So I myself work with people who intellectually, they know that they've outgrown who they were. Most of them can name it, describe a new version of themselves, of who they want to be or who they're moving towards, but they have difficulty landing there. From a somatic standpoint, what would you say is actually happening in that gap?
The body doesn't know how to step into the unfamiliar, so very similar to how I was feeling. And so that's the first step. Just know it's going to feel awkward. It's going to feel different, but that shows expansion, evolution. So it's reframing the mind from that intellectual standpoint that this is actually quite normal and something to be celebrated. That's the first. But the second part of that would be why I love 9D breathwork for somatic healing and reprogramming is because it takes repetition. It takes hearing it, feeling it, programming that reticular activating system to understand that this is the new norm. This is actually the person you're in the midst of becoming. And what I love, and I think from the several podcasts that I've listened to with you, you love when that essence of someone who it really comes out because it's all inside. They don't need to be apologetic for the evolution, for the change.
Right.
It's something to be celebrated.
Always there. It's just been covered up by all this other stuff. So another thing you mentioned on the call was how people will fight for their limitation because it's familiar, it's known. And I would say that was something that resonated with me. Tell me more about that. What does that look like in the body? Yes.
Fighting for the limitations is staying where you are right now, even if mentally you know it's not serving you. I work with a lot of people who want to change their health. They want to change their vitality. They want to change how sharp their mind is, how they want to change how they feel in their clothes. And yet, when it comes to changing their habits in order to get those results, they will fight tooth and nail to stay in the familiar. So what I do is I help break those cycles, those loops. We both do in different ways. And I use changing the state in the body and then programming the mind with a better thought that will serve them more towards the identity they're stepping into. But then we work the subconscious mind because 95% of that brain power is in there to be able to continue the repetition of this new identity. So what happens is it collapses timelines for people to step into that identity and not stay in the familiar, the old, and fight for those limitations a little bit faster, sometimes a lot faster.
And since breathwork is, the main topic, because that's your main modality you've shared, I would say there's a version of breathwork that can make people feel better in the moment. And there's a version, like you've been sharing, that changes the operating system underneath. In your experience, what determines which one happens?
Oh, that's an excellent question and not an easy one to answer because it depends on the person. It depends on their willingness to surrender to change. It depends on their openness and whether they're physically able to move into an active breath work. If they're not, I am able to have really profound, cathartic, identity-changing experiences in down regulation. And if you're not sure what that means, one is just calm, brings you into the parasympathetic nervous system, rest, digest, and heal. I find I get faster results with those who are willing to surrender and get themselves uncomfortable for a short period, safe period of time with a trusted facilitator to activate and put them temporarily into that fight, flight, freeze, into the sympathetic nervous system. And the science is this, because I work with energetics, the physiology, and the neuroscience. What happens is you go into a phenomenon called transient hypofrontality, where the blood flow moves away from the prefrontal cortex, moves into the body to activate, to get people to move and shake and be truly driven, aligned, but driven for change. But when we get there, it quiets the ruminating thoughts in the conscious mind, and it opens up the subconscious mind for unearthing what no longer serves you, which is where I went when I realized this anger, this guilt, this shame, this deep disappointment of what we will never have a chance to do together. When that came up and was seen in the light and came out of my body, then I was able to program a whole new way of thinking. That's why I'm like, this happened for me. I know that I can authentically hold space for people who are experiencing what I had felt. So not a simple answer, and that's why I always offer a complimentary discovery call. If people want to know how they can get the results, we're going to talk about what they're physically capable of, what they're mentally ready for, and I'm going to give them the option. But it can happen as quick as a 90-minute somatic session. People can feel safe in their body and have their whole life start to unfold in another way. That can happen with a 5-minute call.
Positive unraveling. I kind of think of the knot in your shoes, right? You've got to unravel it before you can tie it properly. And same thing with the body, the identity, the soul. Sometimes we have to unravel it first, untangle it before. And like you said, there's that heightened state, that fight, flight, freeze, fawn, and the rest and digest, where mentally, physically, your body, your mind, you're safe. And that's a whole different world from the two.
It is, but I assure you that I do every single journey, even an active journey. We talk, we create safety, we create trust, we create intentions, then we take you through an arc. So down regulation, bringing safety in the body. And if they do activation, we bring the activation up to a peak, bring it back down, continuous safety in the body, and then we integrate as well. It's not like I leave anybody in that active state. So what I'd love for your listeners to know is this isn't something to be afraid of. It is something to ask all your questions, but nothing to be.
All right. So when someone has genuinely crossed into a new self-concept, not just feeling better, but actually felt like experienced that shift in who they believe they are, what do you notice first? And I don't mean what they say, like what you observe in your practice.
They stop fighting for limitations. They are optimistic in the energy of the already being. And then I know the results. If they haven't already started to show up, they're coming on the heels of it. It's inevitable because their energetic vibration is different. How they show up, their confidence is different. So energetically, physically, I can see it in their body language. Sometimes I can even hear it in the magic in their voice. There's just a new level of certainty. And then ultimately, it still comes down to the actions that they take. It's a combination of all of it. I'm sure you've seen it as well. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are when you see it.
It in the body in various ways, in the words they use and the way they speak. I've seen it again and again. You can be in the conversation and just suddenly it's like a new person appeared in front of you. Like the old person disappeared and this other person came in. And I love that moment because that's when you're seeing their true self or a truer version of themselves instead of this one buried under shame and guilt and burnout and whatever else. Now, our work, your work, mine, both, involves holding space for the high achiever to stop performing. And that's a vulnerable ask. It doesn't come easily for people. What would you say makes it safe enough that they actually feel safe enough to stop?
Another excellent question. And I've seen it time and time again. And I would say up until this point, this would be my answer, because I'd love to have something that's more scientific. When I explain to them the energy stores that are within when we allow the essence of who you are without performing to actually come into your life, the joy that you can experience and the productivity that you can have, and ultimately the people you are going to attract because you're truly being yourself, it's going to blow your mind. So if we could just try for a little bit, and you could lean into the fact that this is going to feel unfamiliar and the ego is going to come in and chirp, chirp, chirp. But if you can stay there and start to actually look for the positives in this newness, well, then it's like you've just opened the floodgates.
Of having that trusted person, that trusted facilitator who's holding the safe space, is there to support you, guide you through that process, because it, alone it could be very scary. And I totally get that, because Michael Singer in Untethered Soul, he talks about this. We close parts of ourselves because of hurts or fears that experiences, and that closing closes off energy movement. And when we start to open it up and learn to just let it be open, like, as you said, the amounts of energy, the focus, all of it, just, it feels magical. And as you said, it's hard to put a scientific, quantifiable term on it. It's one of those experiential things. It's not so quantifiable in the traditional sense, I will say.
At this point, I would wholeheartedly agree. And I'm just going to be honest, like, I am far more my true, authentic self. But my identity statement, my self-concept, how I am evolving, I know when I'm incongruent. I know when I'm out of alignment, but I still fall into performance. I just catch it faster. I catch it faster because I can literally feel my vibration lower. I can feel the fact that I'm not actually living into the person I've chosen to become. Does that make sense?
Yes, you feel it because you become aware you've been operating at this new normal. And when you go out of alignment, you feel it. You feel the energy drop, you feel the vibration change. Even if you can't name it, you just feel like something's not right. So you have your practices. And that's the thing. It's not that you don't fall off the horse. It's that you're quicker to get back on and move forward.
And I'd also add one more part that I'm still in the midst of really leaning into more and more every day. We're all a work in progress. I'll be the first to tell you I'm far from perfect. It's like the analogy of being the jellyfish. So I feel out of alignment. I feel constricted. I feel my energy is just not in this magical place. Like, things are just not flowing. And I realize, oh, wait a minute, this is constriction. This is a new level of awareness. Awareness is the first step to greater transformation. That's greater expansion. So I don't stay in the guilt and the shame of fallen off and as long either. So then I realize this is how the jellyfish contracts and then opens up and expands and moves forward. So as much as I don't love the constriction, I now don't judge it as harshly. I'll be honest. I still judge myself. We're still in this together. but I don't hold myself back in that self-sabotaging old pattern that for some reason I was fighting for that limitation. It served me at one point, but it doesn't serve me anymore. And I know I have that awareness.
The awareness of we're out of alignment. We're not operating from the proper true self that we are aiming to be, that we're becoming. Recognizing that, shifting back, as you said, not beating ourselves up over the fall or the slip, realizing like, okay, lesson learned. This was how I got there. Okay, I'm going to move forward. And now I know that I'm going to use this as a common example. Picking up the phone and looking at social media is a trap, right? Or something similar, right?
Exactly.
That we realize what are those things that pull you away, that pull you out of alignment. And so you can build the systems internally to reduce it, to help prevent it.
I'll share one of my systems, and that's I had to fall because we're all human. And I like that I can be relatable and honest and have real stories so people realize, like, don't put me up on that pedestal. Yes, I'm studied. Yes, I really bring a lot of excellence to my work, but I'm far from perfect. And I've been there. I remember when. And so when it happens, one of my systems is reframing it that this makes me an even more authentic leader. However, I do hold myself radically responsible for not continuing that loop. That's my job, is now that I have the awareness with love and kindness, let's move forward, let's pivot, let's really do our very best to
right.
not
It's
fall back
ownership
into those
and
traps
responsibility,
again.
not self-flagellation to punish yourself for it's okay, I made a mistake, I did this wrong, I'm going to change my path, I'm going to reframe it. As you said, great point. So if a listener is sitting with this right now, knowing that something has shifted, but their body still feels like it's operating in the old version, what was one thing you would say to them?
Change your state. You got to change your state. I'm telling you, your mind cannot solve a problem in the energy that it was created. I'm a firm believer in that. No matter how hard and mentally strong you are, it is easier to change the state of the body first and then the state of the mind. Change the environment, change your physicality, and breath work is scientifically proven to be one of the fastest ways to change your state. And it doesn't take that much effort, and it's free. You have it in your back pocket. Once you learn the tools to use your breath consciously.
I often say intentional breathing, right? You're consciously, intentionally choosing how you breathe instead of the standard autonomic breathing. And I absolutely agree, changing the state, I learned it as an emotional triangle. There's the way you're talking to yourself, the language you're using as you speak to yourself. There's your beliefs about who you are, what you're capable of, all of that. And those take more time to change. They're going to take work and they're going to take effort to change. The third corner of the triangle is your state, as you just said. And that is something that's very easy to change. Like you said, go to a different room, go for a walk, take control of your breath it doesn't even, we talked about a 90-minute breathwork session, and that might be daunting to some, but this is like 5 minutes, or less.
I can teach a simple pattern that it's one breath and it'll change your state. Would you like me to have your listeners do this? It's super great. It's safe for anybody, and it's great if you're struggling with traffic right now. If you happen to be listening and multitasking, it's going to put you out of fight, flight, freeze, which is where most people, it is their baseline most of the day, into that rest, digest, and heal where you can feel more grounded. The way you do it is you breathe in through your nose, into your diaphragm, into your belly. I will say most people, unbeknownst to them, are in fight, flight, freeze because they're breathing
very
short
shallow.
and
Yeah.
in and out through the mouth, only it's really shallow. So ideally, you want to breathe in through the nose. It's your first line of filtration for the air. In through the nose. It's fine if you can't breathe through your nose, if you have to breathe through your mouth. But if you can, in through the nose, but push it right down into the belly like you're inflating a balloon. And you're going to do that about 60%. Then you're going to take another sniff of air into the chest. So it's 2 inhales. And then you're going to breathe longer on the exhale. Ideally, you can make an audible sigh if you're by yourself, or just breathe through a straw like you're bringing a little bit of vibration, but it comes out through the mouth. So let's try it together. In 3, 2, 1, breathe in through the nose into the belly, 60%. Now another sniff of air into the chest. Now relax with an audible sigh or breathing through a straw. The key is longer on the exhale. If you just notice how you feel in your body, you probably feel a little calmer. But I'm going to tell you the physiology. Your blood pressure went down slightly. Your heart rate went down slightly. You have more blood flow to the prefrontal cortex, so you've got more blood flow to the brain so that you can think more clearly. That long exhale puts you into the parasympathetic nervous system. And so you're feeling more safe in the body. The reason for blowing through the straw, so you're making that vibration or the audible sigh, is because we stimulated the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is the largest nerve in the body, goes from the brain to every single organ, and its job is to help your body feel safe. So one breath can change your state. Now, I have a plethora of breath patterns that I teach. It can be a couple of breaths, but the key is ideally in through the nose, deep into the belly, and then longer on the exhale.
Absolutely. That's what I teach my son. We do that every night before he goes to sleep. A longer than usual in-breath into the belly, like you said, the balloon. Hold it for a short period, and that extended exhale, that much longer, slower exhale. As you said, including the sound. I thought of the straw as that's a way to help slow the breathing down. Because if you're just breathing out, like most of the time, I think of when people breathe out, it's like when you've dived in the pool and you're like, right? But we don't want that. We want this nice, gentle, slow exhale, right?
I'm so glad you brought kids up, because I'm thrilled to hear that the word breath is even in the vocabulary in your home. And then you're creating these beautiful habits, these new patterns, these new understandings of how important sleep is and how to be able to help them be able to do that. I work with kids, and it could be something as simple as smell the flower, blow out the candle, in through the nose, and then out through the mouth. And I work with teenagers right now. Our teens are so highly stressed. The high levels of depression and anxiety in our teens. And breath is a simple way to be able to help them realize they have control over how they feel in their body, how their brain can work. And if they want to actually work at a deeper level, we can move into that subconscious mind.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be a 90-minute session.
Like you said, this is something portable. You can do it anytime, anywhere, to just help downregulate a bit, calm, bring back that clearer thinking, and find a little peace in spite of external circumstances.
Now, I know you work with a lot of high achievers. And a lot of people who are very intellectually smart, and therefore sometimes that ego can be very stubborn. They can stick their heels in. And that's when we see that pattern of fighting for the limitations because we're in the familiar. Some, they're not going to be able to get out of the state they're feeling because they're so steadfast in it, with the physiological side, where I taught you to just breathe in through the nose, into the belly, into the chest, relax and let go. Sometimes you need a little activation. And I wouldn't do this while you're driving, but I just want you to know you'll have these tools you can use at any time. If you want to be motivated, you want to get out of the funk you might be in, or apathy, or you've been looking at an email and you're not reading anything because you're just too fired up, or you want to get into more creativity, we're going to do the reverse. We're going to breathe in through the mouth and then into the chest and then relax and let go. You don't even think about the exhale. So it's a long inhale, very short exhale. It activates. 5 to 10 of those can be better than a cup of coffee for focused. Your eyesight gets very, very focused. It's actually just like when you have been activated because you're frightened. If you were running away from danger, blood flow went from the brain into the muscles so that you could get out of danger. And everything just becomes much more focused, but it also stops the ruminating thoughts. Because if you're in that apathy or frustration or fighting for a limitation, it's likely a belief that's ruminating, but into opening up that subconscious mind where you can be creative, highly magnetic, and energetic. The key is to become intentional, as you mentioned, and not stay there too long, because we got to bring the lights down.
Absolutely.
Or the body goes into burnout.
All right. So we talked about this on our first call. I'm going to bring it up because I want to poke it a little deeper, because I feel like we didn't quite dig in all the way. And that question was, if there's one thing you know about the connection between breath and identity that most people in your space don't want to say out loud, what is it?
I would say they don't usually know. They're not usually aware. And that's where a facilitator with particular guided journeys can help them become more aware. So what does breath have to do with the gap as to where they are with their identity? I think what the breath does, what I know the breath does, is brings a new level of safety to the body for new awarenesses to come out, for new ideas to be considered, for new observations to come forth, and even whether not consciously aware and maybe even generationally passed on. And that's why I'm saying if something is that they can't consciously figure out where the gap is, breath can help them unravel that and identify that and become more aware of that. The tricky part, to answer your question, is a lot of that is just, you don't relive anything. It's like you're this detached witness. You may somatically release through tears, but have no idea where the tears are coming from. You may laugh. You may just I get a lot of people who their jaw trembles. They get a lot of tingling and cramping. And on the other side of it, they're like, I don't know, but I just feel lighter. I've got a greater capacity. There's more hope. And I can step into this new identity because there's this new level of freedom that I feel both in the body and in the mind, in alignment to take different action. That's the pattern I see. I don't know if I fully answered your question, but that's the pattern I see.
Tabatha. Breath is a tool that can help shift the state very quickly, either direction, as you mentioned, bring us from the rest and digest up into an activation and then gently come back down, or like the emergency breath, we'll call it an emergency breath, to kind of settle it. It is about releasing and opening up and letting go, taking that observer position, right? Like that's what Michael Singer talked about. I teach this too. You're not your thoughts. You're not the body. You are something much more. But we are so used to operating as this physical human person. That's our body and our thoughts. But when we actually can pull back and go to that core of ourself and watch what's happening, we can release that. As you said, you don't have to relive any of the pain and trauma and everything, not in the traditional way. Like you said, the body releases it in its own way. The mind can release it as well.
I will say, I don't know, we haven't asked directly, but I have had many people have non-ordinary state experiences where they feel like they are connecting, whether it be to their higher self. I've had people say, I felt like I had a conversation with God. I felt fully connected to my divine essence, and there were answers that were unveiled to them. And I have all kinds of journeys. One that I specialize in is breathing through grief and loss, because that's how I found, especially 9D somatic breath work. But we have a 9DMT, which is like a plant medicine ceremony without any foreign substance going into the body. We use the breath to tap into an amazing pharmacy, which just allows people to surrender and quiet that conscious mind and tap into what's not known to them in their conscious mind right away. So that's just another way that people can really go beyond what they know right now through breathwork.
I've actually experienced that. I was at an event and we did this it was a combination of meditation and breath work. And as you said, it allowed us to tap into parts of ourselves, parts of myself that I didn't even know were there. And as you said, the natural pharmacy that's already in us without any foreign substances. And even breath work, I've heard it said, why does smoking relax most people? Because it's breath work. They're just using a tool to do it. And, among other things.
I had a client come back after a few sessions and he said, well, I wasn't expecting this to be a perk, but I don't need to smoke anymore. What I do is I go outside and I do some breath work and I'm getting that same calm in the body. And so, yes, that can be a definite perk or an intentional change in someone's life.
So one final question. This is kind of along the lines that I usually close up episodes with. If someone listening to this today is standing at the edge of a version of themselves that they haven't quite been able to move into fully, what would you want them to know before they take the next breath?
There is only one you. He or she is in there, and if you feel it, it is your right, your birthright, to step into that version. You are so worthy and capable of living everything that you desire. And the key is to know you don't have to do it alone. And you are capable of it.
Yes.
And
and I would say not only do you not have to do it alone, I firmly believe we are meant to grow in partnership. Like that's when we really grow. We can do little growth on our own, but when we're in partnership with another human being, it's like magnified, amplified. Absolutely. Well, thank you again, Tabatha. I really appreciated having you on the show today and all the wisdom you shared. Keep shining, keep smiling. And for everybody listening, thank you for tuning in. And I will leave Tabatha's information in the show notes, but would you go ahead and tell the best way to find you, Tabatha?
Thank you so much for having me and giving me the chance to share the power of somatic breathwork, especially 9D. If you go to tabatha.online, that is my website, and I've got a number of freebies. If you want to hear a cinematic trailer of 9D and how it works, because it's breath plus 8 modalities that is very entertaining in your ears, can be done online or in person. And I've got a few other freebies that are there. And I offer a 30-minute complimentary discovery call. If you have questions, I'd love to answer them. And I play on Instagram and Facebook. And it's just Tabatha, Tabatha _DeBruyn, DeBruyn. And if you slide into my DMs, ask some questions, I curate my content around what would add value.
Excellent. And as I said, I'll put those all in there in case you didn't catch it. Even though Tabatha spelled everything out very clearly and has nice, simple addresses, they will be in the show notes. So check there. Or if you want to talk to me on my no-cost identity clarity call, that link will be in the show notes as well. Have a great weekend. You guys actually won't be listening to this on Friday, but it's Friday for us, or as I always say, Friday. So take care, and we'll talk to you all soon. Thanks a lot. We spend a lot of time on this show talking about the threshold, the space between the identity that got you here and the one required for the new ground. You're listening to this because something in your current architecture is fracturing. You're running the performer playbook or the striver protocol, and it's costing you an immense amount of energy to maintain the facade. The external results are there, but the internal friction, it's burning you out. Most people will let this episode end and go right back into the performance. They'll put the mask back on for their next Zoom meeting and keep relying on the identity that's actively caging them. I'm looking for the leader who's done performing. If you're ready to look at the structural identity collapse happening beneath the surface, we need to map your architecture. Go to the link in the show notes, book your identity clarity call. We'll identify the exact survival identity running your calendar and begin the shift into conscious leadership. Stop performing, start becoming.